I keep the stack the way my grandfather kept his boats, which is to say I keep it like it might decide to kill me, because it might. There is a list. Every morning I walk the list before I let myself want anything, before tea, before the window, before I look out at the underwhite and let it be beautiful. The list is the 4 anchor routes where the guy cables go down into the spire. The list is the tension drums and the brake shoes and the spool teeth. The list is the kite tethers, all 11 of them, each one a rope as thick as my wrist running up into the high wind where the sails ride and pull and turn the drums that make the stack worth standing. The list is the splice in the number 6 tether that I have been promising the company I will replace for 2 turnings now, and that I check every morning with my thumb because I do not trust it, and a man should not lie to himself about a rope. I do the list. The splice holds. The morning is the white kind, the cloud sea lying flat and bright below me from one edge of the world to the other, and the spire of black rock I live on top of standing up out of it like the last tooth in an old jaw. There is nothing else above the underwhite for 40 span in any direction except other stacks I cannot see, and the keepers on them I have never met, and the high cold sky that is mine in the morning and belongs to other things in the turning. I am a wind harvest keeper. I sit on a rock above the clouds and I let the wind pull on 11 sails, and I sell the turning of the drums down a cable to people I will also never meet, who live somewhere the air is thick and the ground is close, and who have decided sensibly that they would rather pay a strange man to live up here than do it themselves. They are right. It is not a life most people would take. It is the life I took, for reasons that are my own and that I have stopped explaining, and on the ordinary mornings, the white, flat, bright mornings, I would not trade it. This is not going to be a story about an ordinary morning. I want you to have one first, so you know what I lost and what I was protecting. That is all the ordinary morning is for. The turning comes early that year. I know it before I see it, the way you know weather in your teeth. The wind backs around to the cold quarter 2 days ahead of when the almanac says it should, and it brings the smell with it, a thin, sour, feathered smell, like a cellar full of old wings. The sails feel it before I do. They start to chatter on their tethers, hunting, the way a horse will sidestep at something downwind that you cannot hear yet. I bring 3 of the high sails down to half height and lock the drums, and I stand on the platform with my hand on the cold rail and I wait. And along about the middle of the afternoon, the first of them comes down the corridor. The Veyer call them skell. I have heard the word twice in my life, both times from a grounded trader who came up the supply line once a season and would not look at the sky while he did it. I call them stupors, or I call them the column, because that is what they are when the turning is on a column, a river of them, pouring down the high wind corridor between the spires. Thousands on thousands of pale leather-winged things with hollow bones and long jaws, and a cry that gets into the back of your skull and stays there for days after they are gone. First one is alone, a scout maybe, or just an old one that could not keep pace. It comes down the corridor in long falling sweeps, wings barely moving, riding the cold quarter wind, and it passes the stack close enough that I can see the wet shine of its eye and the way the light comes through the thin skin of its wing, the way light comes through a leaf. It does not stoop at me. I am too big, and I am not in the open the way it wants. I am up against the iron of the platform, a hard shape, a wrong shape. It looks at me the way you look at a stone in a field. Then it is gone down the white, and behind it, far off and getting closer, I can hear the rest. I do the sensible things. I bring the last sails down. I lock everything. I shutter the platform and I go inside the cab, the iron box at the top of the mast where I live, where the stove is and the bunk is and the long window that I love and that I now cover with the storm boards, plate by plate, until there is one slit of gray left to see through. I put the kettle on because a man should have tea before a siege. And I sit, and I listen to the turning come on, the cry of it rising from a thing far off to a thing all around, until the whole sky is full of them, and the stack stands in the middle of it like a stone in a river of knives. It will last, the turning, 6 days, 8 the bad years. You do not go out. You keep the rig locked and you keep yourself inside and you wait for the river to run dry, and on the far side of it the wind backs around to the warm quarter again and the sky is empty and clean and yours, and you go out and you check the list, and you count what the turning broke and you fix it. That is the plan. That is the plan every turning. I have done 11 of them on this stack and the plan has never once failed me. I find her on the morning of the second day. I am at the gray slit in the storm boards with my tea, watching the column, which you do because you cannot help it, the way you watch a fire. And there is something wrong on the number 4 tether. Down low, where the rope runs out of its fair lead and down into the white, there is a shape on it that should not be there. A small dark shape, clinging low down, just above where the rope goes into the cloud, out in the open where the column runs. I think it is debris first. A bird's nest of wrack blown up out of the underwhite, snagged on the rope. Then it moves. It hauls itself up the rope a hand's width against the wind and stops and presses itself flat. And I understand all at once and with a coldness in my gut that it is alive and it is small and it is out there. The column sees it the same moment I do. A stupor peels off the river. Just one, they hunt one at a time, the way a hawk does, picking, not swarming. It folds its wings and drops out of the running column in a long, beautiful, murderous line, straight at the small thing on the rope, and I am moving before I have decided to, out of the cab and onto the platform into the full scream of the turning, with no plan at all, except that I have a thing in my hand. The thing in my hand is the air horn. The big one, the company issue one for warning supply craft off in fog. I point it down the rope at the falling stupor and I crush the trigger and the stack screams back at the sky. One flat, enormous blast that I feel in my chest more than here, and the stupor flinches off its line. Not far. A body's width. But it is enough. It misses. It pulls up out of its stoop a span below the small thing and beats away, cursing in its own language back into the river. And the small thing on the rope, which had gone utterly still, looks up the length of the number 4 tether and sees me. I cannot tell you what I saw in its face from that distance. Eyes too big, too dark, the wrong shape. I tell myself now that I saw nothing, that it is a thing I added later, but I went down the rope. You do not go out in the turning. I have said that, I said it twice. I went out into it down the number 4 tether on a harness line with the air horn slung across my back, clipped and unclipped, hand over hand down a rope as thick as my wrist into the open sky, with the column running past close enough to touch and the cry of it filling the whole of the world, and twice on the way down a stupor put its eye on me, and I had to stop and twist and blast the horn into its face to turn it. And I did not think about any of it because if I thought about it I would have gone back. I have done frightened things in my life. That was the most frightened, and I did it slow, because rope work done fast is rope work done wrong, and I have buried a man who hurried on a rope. She is, I will say she, though I did not know it then, and it was a long time before I was sure. She is a small grounded thing, no taller than my forearm is long, cling to the rope with both hands and both feet wrapped right around it. And she has been there long enough that her grip has the look of a grip that is part of the rope now, that will have to be unmade rather than released. She is the color of the underside of a leaf, a pale soft gray-green, and she has a smooth hide rather than a pelt, and her hands are webbed and made for climbing, and her eyes, I was right, they are too big and too dark, eyes made for somewhere with no light, somewhere down in the close ground far below the white, and they are fixed on me with no expression I can read at all. At her throat there is a soft fluttering, a membrane pulsing, and out of it comes a sound, 3 notes. The same 3 notes over and over, low and rising and low, a sound like a small instrument being played by something that has forgotten it is playing. I do not know yet that it is fear. I learn it later. At the time I only know that it is the saddest sound I have heard come out of a living thing, and I get my arm around her, rope and child together, and I say the only thing there is to say, which is, I've got you. I've got you. Come on. I've got you, in a language she does not know, and I start back up the rope with one arm because I am not letting go of her with the other, and I am never, it turns out, going to. I get her inside. I get the platform door barred behind us. I stand in the cab with the kettle gone cold and the stove gone low and a small grounded alien child held against my chest, both of us soaked through and shaking, the cry of the column muffled now to a wall of sound beyond the iron, and I think, with the particular clarity you get after the frightened thing is done, I have made a terrible mistake, and I would make it again, and now I have to keep her alive. She will not let go of me for a long time. Hours. I do not make her. I move around the cab one-handed, get the stove up, get a blanket, get the kettle on again with her clung to my front like the rope was clung to, and slowly, as the warmth comes up and the shaking goes out of both of us, the 3 notes at her throat get further apart. That is the first thing I learn about her. When she is afraid, the membrane plays the 3 notes fast and close. When the fear backs off, the notes slow down. By the time the kettle sings, she is humming them so slow and so soft that they are almost not there. And when I sit down at last in the keeper's chair by the stove, she finally lets go of my collar and slides down into my lap and looks up at me, and the membrane goes still. I have nothing in this place made for a child. I have a keeper's stores, hard rations, broth cubes, dried things, a great deal of tea. I do not know what she eats. I do not know if the broth will poison her or the tea will. I take a broth cube and I make it weak and I cool it and I hold it out to her in the cap of the canteen, my hand flat and still under it the way you hold food to a strange animal, and I wait. She looks at it a long time. Then she puts one webbed hand around my whole hand, not the cup, my hand, and tips it to her mouth and drinks, watching me the entire time over the rim, and when it is gone she keeps hold of my hand and will not give it back, and I let her have it. I sit there in the keeper's chair half the night with a sleeping child holding one of my hands in both of hers and the turning screaming outside, and I do the only thing a man can do in that situation, which is stay awake and keep the stove going with the other hand, and think. I name her on the 3rd day. Not properly, she has a name, she has a whole people and a name among them, and I had no right to give her another, but I cannot say her name. When I point at myself and say Mercer, slow twice, 3 times, she watches my mouth with those huge dark eyes, and after a long while she lifts her own hand to her throat and plays a thing, not the Fear 3, a different thing, 4 notes, falling, and I understand that she has told me her name and that I will never in my life be able to say it. So I call her Pell. It is a small plain word, and it is the kind of thing my grandfather would have named a boat, and when I say it and point at her she tips her head, and the next time I say it she answers with the 4 falling notes, and we have an understanding. I am Mercer. She is Pell, and also 4 falling notes. It is enough. I have to tell you about the second half of the 3rd day, because it is the day the plan dies. The way down off the stack is the supply line. It is a cable that runs from the base of the spire down through the underwhite to the grounded country far below, where the Veyer live and the air is thick, and the column does not come. In the ordinary turning you do not use it. There is no need. You wait the 8 days out and the supply craft comes up the line after in the clean weather. But Pell does not belong up here. Pell belongs down there, in the thick close air with her own people. And the moment I am sure she will live I start to think about how to get her down, because that is where she should be, and because, I will be honest with you, because a child is a great weight to carry, and I am a man who chose to live alone on a rock, and I am frightened of how much I already do not want to put her down. I cannot get her down. I work it out on the 3rd afternoon at the slit in the storm boards. The supply line runs out of the base of the spire into the open for 40 span before it drops into the white. 40 span of open rope in the middle of the running column. I got down 40 feet of the number 4 tether with an air horn, and it nearly cost me. You do not take a small grounded child whose own people cannot survive the open sky out across 40 span of it in the turning. You would be carrying her out to the thing that was made, across 10,000 years, to take exactly her. The column would have her in the first 100 feet, and there would not be anything I could do about it, horn or no horn. So the plan dies. The plan was, keep the rig locked, keep myself inside, wait the turning out. The new plan is, keep the rig locked, keep both of us inside, keep her alive and wait the turning out and put her down on the far side of it in the clean weather when the column is gone. It is the same plan with one more body in it. It should not be harder. It is much, much harder, and I find that out over the next days one piece at a time. She eats little and strangely. Broth she will take. Tea she will not, she smells it and the membrane plays a single warning note and she turns her face away, so no tea, good, one thing known. The hard rations she cannot manage, her jaw is not built for them. I take to soaking them down to a paste in broth and she will take that off my fingers. And on the fourth day I find that she will eat the soft pale fungus that grows in the damp under the stove housing, that I have been scraping off and throwing out for 11 years. And after that I do not throw it out, I harvest it. And she has fungus and broth paste and water and slowly the thin look goes off her and she gets not strong. She is never strong, she is a small fragile thing but present. Awake. Curious. That is the turn in her. The fear 3 gets rarer. She starts to move around the cab on her own, low, always low, hands and feet. The way her people move, she does not stand and walk so much as flow along the floor and the lower edges of things. And she finds every dark close space in the cab and learns them. Under the bunk, behind the stove housing, in the gap behind the storm boards. And she goes to them when the column's cry gets loud and comes out of them when it eases. She watches me work the morning list. I do it inside now. The parts I can do inside, checking gauges and tensions through the instruments. And on the 5th day when I tap a gauge, she reaches up one webbed finger and taps it too, and looks at me, and I laugh. The first time I have laughed in days. And the membrane at her throat plays a thing I have not heard before. A quick light rising thing. And I understand that I have just heard a Veyer child laugh. I want to stop here and be honest with you about what I was before her. I had been on the stack 11 years. I came up here after the thing in the grounded country that I do not talk about. That is not this story and is not owed to you. And the reason I stayed 11 years is that up here there is nobody to fail and nobody to lose. And the only thing that needs me is a rig and a list. And a rig does not look at you. And a list does not call you by a name you cannot say. I had made a small hard life with no soft places in it on purpose. And then the turning blew a child onto my number 4 tether and I went down a rope after her with an air horn. And by the 5th day, she was tapping my gauges and laughing at me out of a membrane in her throat. And every soft place I had spent 11 years filling in had opened back up at once. And I was frightened, is the truth. Not of the column. Of how much I had suddenly to lose. The column does not care about any of this. On the 6th day, when by the almanac it should be thinning, it thickens instead. The early turning is a long turning. The cry doubles and doubles again until the iron of the cab hums with it, and the wind backs harder into the cold quarter and gets into the rig, and I start to lose pieces of the stack. The number 9 sail goes first. I feel it before the gauge tells me a lurch, a slackness, and then the drum it feeds runs free with a scream of teeth as the load comes off it. And I get the brake on it before it can spin itself to pieces, but the sail is gone, torn off its tether somewhere up in the high wind, and there is nothing to be done about a sail in the turning. I lock the drum, and I write it on the list of what is broken, and I go on. The number 6 tether, the one with the splice I have been lying to myself about, starts to sing. A rope under too much load sings. It is the worst sound on a stack. It means the splice is working. The strands are starting to draw, and if it lets go under load, it will come back through its fair lead like a whip and take off anything it touches. I dump the load off it, bring its sail down to nothing, feather it out of the wind, and the singing stops. But now I have 2 sails out of 11 and the stack is turning slower, making less. And worst of all, the wind is starting to come at the spire in a way I do not like. A hard quartering shove that the rig was not built to take with sails down on one side and full on the other. The stack starts to lean. Only a little. You would not see it. I feel it in the soles of my feet, the long, slow working of the whole mast as the unbalanced load tries to walk it off true. And I know The way I know weather in my teeth, that if this turning does not end soon, I am going to have a problem that an air horn cannot fix. Pell knows the rig is hurt. I do not know how she knows, but she knows. When the number 9 drum screamed, she came out from behind the stove and crossed the cab to me low and fast and took hold of my boot and played the Fear 3 so fast the notes ran together. And I got down on the floor with her, down to her level the way you have to, because a thing that lives low is asking you to come low when it is afraid. And I put my hand flat on her back, the whole small span of it, and I said, I know. I've got it. I've got you. And I stayed down there with her until the notes came apart again. That is a thing I learned from her that I did not know before her, that you cannot reassure a frightened thing from above. You have to get down where it is. The breach comes on the 7th night. I have boarded the long window with 3 plates, and the 3rd plate is a poor fit. It is a patch plate, salvaged, from a turning 2 years back when a stupor came through the glass. And I have been meaning. There is always a list of things a man has been meaning. The wind that night is the worst of the turning, a screaming quartering wall of it, and the patch plate is on the windward side. And somewhere in the small hours the wind gets a finger behind it and works it. The way the wind works everything, patient, stupid, endless. And at some point in the dark it works it loose enough that the glass behind it goes. And then there is a hole in the cab the size of a dinner plate with the full force of the turning howling through it. And within a breath, drawn in through the hole by the wind or the warmth or by 10,000 years of instinct, there is a stupor in the cab. It is bigger inside than anything has a right to be. In the open sky they are graceful, they are a line drawn down the wind. In a 6-space iron box at night they are an explosion of wing and jaw and that wet shining eye, beating against the storm boards, against the stovepipe, against me, the long jaw snapping, and the cry of it inside the iron is a sound that I will hear for the rest of my life. And it is hunting. It came in for one reason and it has not forgotten the reason. And even thrashing half-blind in a strange box it is turning, casting for the small, low, warm thing that it can smell. And Pell is under the bunk playing the Fear 3 so high and so fast it has become one long, thin scream of notes, and the stupor hears it and goes for the bunk. I get between them. There is not a decision in it. There is no time for a decision. There is just a man and a thing and a child, and the man ends up between the thing and the child with a hand on the firebar off the stove. I will not give you the rest of it in detail. You do not need it and she did not need it, and I have spent a long time making sure the part she remembers is the part where I got between them and not the part that came after. It is a hard thing to kill in a small space. It does not want to die and neither did I, and the cab is wrecked by the end of it. The kettle gone, the gauges smashed, blood, mine and its, black and red across the iron floor. And when it is over I am down on one knee with the firebar still in my hand and a long tear down my forearm where the jaw caught me. And the wind is still screaming through the hole in the window, and the cry of the column is still all around. And under the bunk, a small gray-green child is looking out at me out of the dark with her membrane gone completely silent, which I have learned by now is worse than the Fear 3, much worse. Because the Fear 3 is a thing she does when she still believes someone is coming, and the silence is the thing she does when she has stopped. I put the firebar down. I am bleeding and the cab is open to the turning and the rig is leaning, and there are 100 things on the list more urgent than the child under the bunk, and I go to the child under the bunk first. I get down all the way down, flat on the wrecked floor, down where she is, and I put my hand into the dark space, open, palm up, not reaching, just there, the way I held the broth cap on the first night, and I say her name, the plain word I gave her, Pell, and I wait. It takes a long time, the longest few breaths of the whole turning, and then out of the dark her webbed hand comes and closes around my whole hand, and the membrane plays not the Fear 3, the 4 falling notes, her name. She is telling me her name. I do not entirely understand it even now, but I think what she was telling me in the wreck of the cab with the wind coming through was that she was still there, that there was still a her to have a name. I pull her out very gently and she comes into my chest and holds on the way she held on the first night. and I sit on the floor of my ruined home in the middle of the worst night of the worst turning of 11 years, and I hold her, and I get the bleeding arm pressed against my side, and I think, very clearly, the thought that the whole rest of this story turns on. The stack is going to go. I have done the arithmetic without meaning to, the way you do. 2 sales down. Now the number 6 is going to have to come down too. It is singing again. I can hear it under everything. The splice is finished. It cannot take the night. 3 sails down on one side, full load on the other. The wind hard in the cold quarter. The mast already leaning. The cab open and taking water and weight. The stack is built to stand the turning balanced. It is not built to stand it crippled and lopsided in the worst wind I have ever felt. And somewhere in the next hours, unless something changes, the unbalanced load is going to walk the whole mast past the angle the guy roots can hold, and it is going to go over, and everything tethered to it is going to go down into the underwhite, and that is the arithmetic. There is a thing I can do. I want to be honest about it because the whole of what I am trying to tell you is in the fact that I could have done it and what it would have cost. The stack leans because the load is lopsided. I can fix the lopsided load. Not by raising the down sails, I cannot in this wind alone bleeding. But the company built the rig with a mercy in it for exactly this night. An emergency dump. Every tether runs over a release at the drum, and there is a master release, one lever that lets every rope go at once, dumps all 11 sails into the sky, sheds the whole load, lets the wind take the lot. A mast with no load on it does not lean. A mast with no load on it stands up straight and naked and rides out anything, because there is nothing for the wind to push against. You lose every sail, every tether, the whole season's rig, but the stack lives and the keeper lives, and you build the rig back in the clean weather, and the company grumbles and pays for it, because that is what the dump is for. I have never pulled it in 11 years. I have always found another way. But this night there is no other way, and the dump is right there, the long red lever by the door, and all I have to do is reach up and pull it, and the stack will straighten and we will live. Except for one thing, the number 4 tether. I told you I found her on the number 4 tether, clinging down low, out in the open. I did not tell you that when I brought her in, I did not have time, in the screaming and the bleeding and the keeping her alive, to do anything clean about the number 4. The number 4 sail is still up. It is one of the only sails still up, still pulling, still loaded, and it is on the windward side, and it is. Right now, half of what is keeping the lopsided mast from walking the other way, and the master dump does not pick and choose. The master dump lets every rope go at once. If I pull it, the number 4 goes with all the rest, and the number 4 runs out through its fair lead and down into the white past the very spot where I found her, and the violence of a fully loaded tether dumping, the whip of it, the snapback through the fair lead, the iron block at the rope's end coming loose at the speed the wind decides. That violence happens 5 paces from where Pell is, and I cannot, in the dark and the wreck and the wind, with one arm half open, swear to you or to myself that I can get her clear of it in time. The dump saves the stack, and it might, in the same half-second, kill the child. That is the choice. That is the whole choice. Pull the lever, save the mast and probably the child, possibly not. Or do not pull it and find another way in the dark, alone, bleeding, with the night I had. I did not pull the lever. I want to tell you it was a hard decision, and I stood there torn. It was not. It was the easiest thing I have ever decided, and it was over before I knew I was deciding it. And I have thought about it a great deal since, on the clean mornings, trying to work out whether I was a fool, and I have decided that I was not, and here is why. The lever was the sensible thing, and the sensible thing had a probably in it. Probably she gets clear. Probably the snapback misses her. And I had spent the whole turning learning that you cannot reassure a frightened thing from above, that you have to get down where it is. And you cannot get down where a child is and then bet her life on a probably to save your own rig. You can lose the rig. You can lose the stack. You can lose the 11 years and the small hard life and the rock above the clouds. You cannot, having gone down a rope after her with an air horn, then gamble her on a probably. That is the whole of it. There is not any more to it than that, and any man worth keeping would have done the same, and most of them, I believe, would. So I did the other thing, the thing that does not have a probably in it for her, only for me. I lashed us into the heart of the mast. The mast has a heart, a structural core, a column of iron inside the iron, the strongest single thing on the stack, the part the engineers built to be the last thing standing. I have a body harness and 40 span of good line, not a poor splice, the good rope, the rope I check with my thumb. And I take the child and I make a sling of the blanket against my chest, her in it against me, her hands already locked in my collar and her membrane going so fast and so silent by turns that I cannot keep track. And I lash the two of us, one body now, into the heart of the mast, around the core and around us and around the core again. A turn and a turn and a turn. Every not one I would trust my life to because I am about to, dressed and seized and backed up. The kind of rope work you do slow, because rope work done fast is rope work done wrong. Even when the wind is screaming through a hole in the wall, and the whole mast is leaning out over 1,000 span drop into the white. And then I do not pull the lever. I leave the load lopsided. I leave the stack leaning. And I wedge myself and the child into the heart of the leaning mast, and I take the strain of the night onto the rope and onto my own arms wrapped over the rope, and I hold on. That is the whole plan. That is the entire genius of it. A child who cannot fly, a man who would not let her, one rope around the strongest thing left and a refusal to let go. The wind can have the sails. The wind can have the cab and the kettle and the 11 years. The wind cannot have her, because she is tied to the heart of the thing, and so am I, and the heart of the thing is the last part to go, and I have decided that the heart of the thing is not going to go tonight, and a man can decide that. It is, in the end, the only thing a man can do, that the wind cannot decide a thing, and then not stop deciding it, hour after hour, all night, no matter what. I will not pretend it was a peaceful night. The mast leans further. There is a point, somewhere in the blackest part of it, where it leans far enough that I am no longer standing against the core but hanging from it, my whole weight and hers on the rope, the floor of the cab gone slantways under us, the wind a solid screaming wall coming through the broken window, and the open hole where the third stormboard tore away. There is a point where I am sure it is going, where I feel the long working in the core go past anything I have ever felt, a deep groan in the iron like the whole spire turning over in its sleep, and I get my arms hard over the rope and I get my body around the child and I do the thing you do, which is the only thing there is, which is hold on and say the words. I've got you, I've got you, I've got you. Over and over into the small gray-green head jammed under my chin, in a language she does not know, all night, until the words stop being words and become just the shape my mouth makes when I breathe. And under my chin, after a long time, after the worst of it, the membrane starts to play again, not the Fear 3. The 4 falling notes. Her name. Quiet. Then quieter. And then, somewhere in the last black hours, against my chest, lashed to the heart of a leaning mast in the worst turning of 11 years, she goes to sleep. I do not sleep. I hold on and I feel her breathe, and I listen to the cry of the column begin at last, far off and then nearer to over to thin. The turning ends the way it always ends, which is the way the worst things end, not with a sign, just with an absence, a thing you only notice has stopped some while after it has stopped. I become aware that the wall of wind is not solid anymore, that the cry has gaps in it, that the iron is not humming. The mast has stopped working in its socket. The wind has backed. Sometime in the night, I could not have told you when, around toward the warm quarter, and the lean has eased, not gone, but eased, the load and the wind no longer fighting to walk the mast off true. And through the broken window, gray now, then pale, then white, comes the morning. I get us unlashed slow. Rope work done fast is rope work done wrong, and I am not going to make a mistake on the last knot of the worst night of my life. I get the blanket sling off my chest, and I find that I cannot, for a while, open my arms. They have been wrapped over the rope so long and so hard that they have forgotten how to do anything else, and I have to talk them out of it, finger by finger. And then I am standing in the wreck of my home in the white morning light with a small grounded child asleep against me, and the column is gone, and the stack is still standing, leaning and stripped and broken but standing, and we are alive. I carry her out onto the platform. I do not know why except that after 8 days inside I want the air, and I want her to have the air, the clean, empty, warm quarter air with nothing in it that hunts. The underwhite lies below us flat and bright to the edge of the world. 2 sails left of 11. The number 6 tether hanging slack and finished. The splice finally let go in the night. I had been right not to trust it, for all the good being right does a man. The number 4 still up, still loaded, still the thing I did not dump. And the morning so quiet after the turning that I can hear her breathe. She wakes on the platform. The light is wrong for her, too bright, too open, the sky too wide, and the first thing she does is play the Fear 3 low and press into me and turn her face from the sky, and I understand, and I take her back to the lee of the cab where the iron makes a wall and a smaller piece of sky, and there she settles and looks out cautious at the empty white, and the membrane goes quiet. They come for her at midday. I feel them on the supply line before I see them. The cable shivering, the way a fishing line shivers, something climbing it up out of the white. The veer. 3 of them, then 5, then more, coming up the long cable hand over webbed hand out of the thick low country, up through the underwhite and out into the open sky that they cannot abide, into the bright wide open death of it, because their young were scattered in the turning, and they have come up into the worst place in their world to look for them. I have never seen a veer up close who was not a frightened trader who would not look at the sky. These ones look at the sky. They make themselves look at it, the whole murderous open span of it, the membranes at all their throats playing the Fear 3 in a kind of terrible chorus, and they climb out across the open onto the spire, and they look for their children. And I understand that I have spent 8 days thinking I was the brave one, and I was wrong. The brave ones climbed up out of the safe ground into the killing sky the moment it was clear, because that is what you do. That is what anybody worth keeping does. You go up into the worst place there is after the small ones. Pell hears them before she sees them. The 4 falling notes come out of her, loud now, and an answer comes back from the spire, more notes, a whole conversation of them, and she is up and flowing across the platform low, and fast in a way I have not seen her move, toward the iron rail and the edge, and one of the veer comes up over the rail, older, gray going to white at the throat membrane, and the 2 of them meet in a tangle of webbed hands and falling notes and a sound I have no word for. And I stand back against the cab and I let them have it because it is theirs, and it is not mine, and it was never going to be mine. The old one looks at me a long time after. We have no language, there is no word between us. But the old one looks at me and looks at the wreck of the cab, and at the slack finished number 6, and at the 2 sails left of 11, and at the long black and red tear down my forearm that I have not had time to dress, and at the number 4 tether still up, still loaded, and the old one is grounded folk. The old one knows rope and load and lean. The old one lives a whole life under the weight of things. And I watch the old one work out slow, the way I work weather in my teeth. What the number 4 still being up means, what it cost to leave it up, what I did not dump and why. The old one looks from the number 4 to me, and the membrane at the old one's throat plays a single low long note that I have never heard from Pell, a note like a thing being set down, and the old one bows the whole low body to the iron of the platform, all the way down, the way her people go all the way down, and stays there a moment and comes up. And I get down, all the way down onto the wrecked iron to the old one's level, because you cannot answer a thing from above. You have to get down where it is, and I have learned that. She taught me that. The small one taught me that in 8 days, and the old one and I are there a moment on the platform in the white morning, down low together, 2 old keepers of small things, with no word between us and none needed. They take her down before the light starts to go. You do not cross the open at dusk, even after the turning. The old one makes the sling for her, their own kind of sling, woven of something they brought up the cable, and Pell goes into it, and is passed to the rail, And before she goes, she turns and finds me across the platform with those huge dark eyes made for somewhere with no light. And she lifts one webbed hand to her throat, and she does not play the Fear 3, and she does not play the 4 falling notes that are her name. She plays mine, 2 notes flat plain, the closest a throat membrane can come to Mercer, a thing she has worked out how to say in the last hour, the way I worked out Pell, a name for a thing you cannot quite say but will not let go of. 2 flat notes, my name in the only language she has. And then the old one takes her down the cable into the white, and the line shivers and stills, and she is gone down into the thick, safe, close country where the sky cannot have her, where she belongs, where I put her down because that is where she should be, and where I will never in my life be able to follow, because the air down there would kill me as surely as the open sky up here would kill her. I stand on the platform a long time after the line goes still. Then I go in and I get the arm dressed, and I put the kettle on the spare kettle. The good one is gone, and I get out the list. Because the stack is leaning and stripped, and the cab is open to the sky, and the number 6 is finished, and there are 2 sails left of 11, and a man does not lie to himself about a rig any more than he lies to himself about a rope, and the work does not care what kind of night you had. I walk the list. 4 anchor roots holding. The dump lever by the door that I did not pull. The number 4 tether still up that I will bring down myself slow in the clean weather by hand the way it should be done. I write down what the turning broke. It is a long list. It is the longest list of 11 years. There is a man who keeps the next stack over 40 span off that I have never met and never will. We trade whether sometimes down the company line, 2 old keepers passing notes across a sky neither of us can cross. After the clean weather comes, he asks me down the line how I came through the early turning, and I tell him, stripped, 2 sails, the 6 let go, the cab open. Bad turning, he says. Bad turning, I say. And then he asks the thing a keeper asks, the only thing, which is, did you pull the dump? Did you save the rig? And I tell him no. He is quiet on the line a while. A keeper who does not pull the dump in a turning like that is a keeper who lost a season of rig to keep something the dump would have endangered, and there is only one kind of something that is. He does not ask me what it was. That is not a thing keepers ask. But after a while he sends one more note down the line, and it is the closest thing to the truth anyone has ever said to me about that night, and I have kept it. He says, a rig you can build again. And I send back the only thing there is to send, which is the thing I learned in 8 days from a small grounded child who could not fly, lashed to the heart of a leaning mast in the worst wind of my life, with one good rope around the strongest thing left, and a sky full of things that hunt. The thing that is the whole of what a man is for in the end, when the wind has taken everything else and is reaching for the last of it. You don't let go of the rope.